Alright, guys, gals, and everything in between. Another week, another Doctor Who. God, it feels so good to be back. This week... this week on Doctor Who, seriously, that's what I call an episode of Doctor Who. It was intense. Okay, so we start off the episode with kind of comedic exchange between Missy and Clara. Clara's hung up on a rope, and how do we explain that Missy has died now twice in the last 2 seasons? Well, of course, it's simple. She used a teleportation device, and I like that they threw in a 4th Doctor reference. That was a really satisfying thing for me, is that the 4th Doctor was thrown in there. And actually the 1st Doctor, is where he's running and Missy is talking about a story about the Doctor. And how that it could be any face, and he runs around a corner and I'm like, it's the 1st Doctor! And it's like, but it doesn't really matter to me, which also makes me really happy to see the fact that Missy does not necessarily see all these faces. Like, she does, but it's like how you change a hairstyle, I change what I'm wearing. It, to them, doesn't matter. They see almost like the soul or the essence of the person, and I think that's a really interesting theory. This episode got down to some of the meat of just the psyche of some of these characters, and I really found that intriguing. What I loved is after we talk about how the Doctor was clever, how does the Doctor get out? Because he knows that there's always a way that you can get out. There's always that second option. There's always that way you can win. It's never a one-way street. And if it is, then dig underneath the street kind of thing. Like, the Doctor is confident. That's how he wins. And I think that that's a great message. Now, because I also break down the episode, but I also discuss what I think about it. I think that's a really good message out there that they're teaching in this episode to people who necessarily don't have great confidence, is there is always a way. One of my favorite segments in this whole episode is where Missy and Clara are about to break into the sewer. And she's sitting there, and she's like, how far do you think it's down from the bottom? And Clara is sitting there, like, well, I don't know, like 20 feet or so. We could throw a rock down. And Missy goes, oh, great idea. Smack, throws Clara down the tube. She's like, ah. She's like, 20 feet. All right. And then goes down there. And I was like, that's so great, because Missy is a dick. But at the same time, she is... she's being an anti-hero at this point. She's a jerk, but she's still trying to win. And so she's going through and she's like, well, we need a Dalek. So she goes in and they capture a Dalek. And this, my friends, is probably the most interesting thing this could be the most interesting thing a Doctor Who episode has delivered to us in a long time. And I mean just fascinating as a character gets. Because Missy is sitting there and talking to Clara and is saying say these things. And I think it's funny where Clara's like, I am Clara. And she's like, say I'm Clara. And she's like, I'm Clara. And you hear the Dalek. And the Dalek is sitting there, it's like, I am a Dalek. And I'm like, oh my god. So they keep going. And anytime Clara says anything emotional, the Dalek says exterminate, which shows that the Dalek says things emotionally. Missy starts running experiments on this Dalek machine, and she thinks it's so fascinating how they all kind of do, is where there's certain phrasings that really show, as Missy says in the episode, a Cyberman represses emotions, a Dalek channels it to violence, which means Daleks are very emotional, very passionate creatures. And the way this scene was done breaks it down into a fine psychology of a violent archetype. And I think that is so fascinating about this episode. It's one of my favorite things that you could do in a Doctor Who episode like this. I absolutely was enthralled by this conversation, even more so than the whole entire episode. At the same time, you have Davros and the Doctor having a conversation about about Davros and all of their adventures and times they fought each other, and how they don't necessarily see each other as enemies, like Missy and the Doctor. With Davros in this whole equation, you see Davros getting slowly more and more humanized, where he's resting on the side of his chair, and I couldn't help but be so interested by the fact that Davros at one point starts to cry and says, "I want to see you with my own eyes in my dying breath," and Davros starts to cry. And I love in this episode we get to see a lot more of the humanity, and at the same time the excitement of Clara and Missy breaking into the compound on Skara. With this episode, I do think it's really good that we're seeing this very human side, because once again, we're fleshing out the Doctor as a human character. Like, this character is real and has genuine emotions. The strangest thing they brought up in this episode is the Daleks' sewage is almost like they shed their skin, but it's still alive. So the Daleks regenerate in a way. And I found that to be really weird. I just have to note that out there. I think that's really weird. Has that been referenced before? Let me know in the comments section, because I don't remember that ever being brought up. But I do think it's a really interesting concept, almost like a skin shed that actually is still alive. And could you see that as the same as regeneration? With this episode, the Doctor does something with Heart. And the Doctor with Heart grabs, like with regeneration energy, says, okay, I'm gonna bring you some life force. But what he doesn't equate for, or does he? He grabs on, and with the regeneration energy, it's actually Snake Man McVoldemort dude. So then the Doctor's struggling because that was actually Davros's ruse to get the regeneration energy from the Doctor to become anew. But Missy, at the same time, is trying to get through to the Doctor, and she's flirting with Dalek Sec, I believe it is, and is like, no, we need to go see Davros. Gets in there, breaks in, starts shooting at the cords, and it's just like, and it's all intense and cool, and they do that Stephen Moffat slow motion where she's like, and then the Doctor's like, it happens, and like sparks shoot up where it's like, whoosh, and it's like every Stephen Moffat episode ever has that somewhere. So on this, they start to break out, and Davros is like, no, the Time Lords, if they're gonna move on, you've now given me my regeneration energy, so now the Daleks can move forward as well. And then the Doctor says, but I gave you the regeneration energy to all of you, including your dead. And I think that was awesome, because then you see like this weird ooze. And it reminded me of the Blob from back in the day, like, you know, the old school Blob movie, where all of a sudden the like weird mud stuff is pouring through, and they're like, no! And they get out of there and they leave Missy. But then they have this confrontation where Missy is trying to tell the Doctor to kill a Dalek. And the Dalek keeps saying mercy and is talking, but they can't get around it because it's Clara. And Clara can't say these things, and Missy's trying to get the Doctor to kill Clara. And so finally, the Dalek machine says mercy, and the Doctor says, wait, that's not in your vocabulary. How are you saying this? So then he gets Clara out, they escape, and leave Missy down there, which means Missy's alive with the Daleks, which, if you ask me, towards the end of the series, we are going to see Missy again. She's going to be the main antagonist, and we're going to have our Doctor Master battle, and it's going to be epic because it'll involve the Dalek. With this, all of a sudden the Doctor's talking to her, and she's like, how, if it's not in the vocabulary, could the Doctor say mercy? And in going with this, the Doctor realizes he has to go back in time, and that's where we see the clip in the beginning, where all of a sudden he's just like, click, exterminate. He's not trying to exterminate Davros. He kills all the little hand mines, and then when Davros comes forward, he's like, are you on the good side or the bad side? He's like, it doesn't matter what side I'm on. What does matter is mercy. And that gave the seed in Davros's mind. So inadvertently, Davros defeated himself, and the Doctor created the seed that would allow Clara to live, creating that fine story arc completion. God dang, this writing is good. So, I love this episode. I think the biggest cue right now for things to come in the series is Missy with the Daleks being like, oh, I have an idea next, and she's all flirty, and they keep teasing the idea of a female Doctor. It's probably going to happen. I might do a sort of blurb one day about my thoughts on that, about the idea of a female Doctor. I don't necessarily agree with it, but either way, that's a discussion for another day. So, guys, gals, and everything in between, what did you think of this episode of Doctor Who? Did you think it was as good as I thought it was? Comment below. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Got plenty more videos coming to ya.